All right, welcome to Testimony Mountain. It's always a joy to have Jessie with us
Hello.
and excited about some things coming up. If you want to share some upcoming things.
We did. Yeah. So the first, I have an event that's going to be in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. It's an Eyes Wide Open event. There's going to be a lot of big names there: Dr. Artis, Kathy O'Brien, Judy Mikovits. So I encourage people to check into that. And that is March 23rd through the 24th. And you can register for that at www.elmastery.org. And then it's EWO for Eyes Wide Open or /EWO. So I encourage you to look into that. You can see links for that on my Twitter and other places as well on my Patreon. And then we decided gift for Austin. So
Yay!
we'll have tickets up for that soon, and that's going to be great. And we'll be doing it'll be a little different. This will be an event where we'll be breaking down the system some more, talking about, how did the priests and the priestesses at the regional levels work and operate, particularly in that Austin area. And we'll go and view some places where, I'm pretty positive they're active, and we'll be looking at, like, how do we know by the outside structures of the buildings, what are their signs and symbols that they leave around to communicate to each other, what they're up to and where they do certain things. So that's going to be a great event and very insightful.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. And so we were just chatting about where we were gonna go today. And this morning, my editor sent me some advertisements that have been put up in her region in the last little bit. And so I thought we'd do a little bit of decode. I wasn't aware of this particular project.
I wasn't either till today.
So we're going to take a look at some of their ads and just see what clues the Lord can give us and how we can be praying. So here
Yes.
we go. All right.
Yeah, so it's the MAAC project that's connected to Head Start. And, as we begin to look into this, we see some interesting symbols. And I'll just point out, that beginning letter in front of the M there is meant to look like an M, but really what it looks like is you have the Masonic apron.
Mm.
Um, is it connected to masonry? It looks like that kind of that same shape you would see on the Google envelope, which also represents the Masonic, um, we'll call it the loincloth, that they gird their loins with. And, I think the colors are significant. I think that they're connecting certain things. And we've talked about, in the system, how they start training at a young age in the preschool years, for the kids that they've chosen for certain positions. So, from what I'm seeing so far of this program, it looks like it's connected to places that may indeed be training children for future system positions. Um, so um, that is very intriguing. I think this should be on a lot of people's radars, especially in regards to, it looks like it's connected to immigration.
Mhm.
Um, we know we've had a lot of kids coming in across the borders, especially down in Texas. Um, where are those kids going? Are they dispersing them all throughout the United States? I believe that some of those children are chosen, to be in certain positions within the system, while others are brought across solely to be sacrificed and killed. So, this should be in the top of our radar if we have programs going on find out who's running those programs in your area, who are they working with, and who are they connected to, and where is the supply of children coming from. That's really important. And it looks like the MAAC is connected to uh, the Maya Academy of Advanced Creativity.
I think I've got that slide.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right
there.
there. Yeah. So, but what we notice is it's kind of interesting that they change, like you see in some of the other symbols, like the V's there change position.
Hmm.
Um, it's interesting that they have that looking like energy rays or arrows going out, or sonic, hypersonic sound going out off of the creativity. Um, but when I looked into that, there's a whole bunch of different places. It had the MAAC of Gurion sector, which it was like, what is that? So
Hmm.
when I looked up the Gurion sector, literally it says that it's pronounced Gurugram district, and Gurion is officially named Gurugram and is a satellite city and administrative headquarters of the Gurugram district, located in the northern Indian state of Haryana.
Wow.
And so they have a whole bunch of these. Another one is Lakit Nagar. Um, they had one, it looks like it uh, Advanced Maya Academy for Advanced Cinematics. They've got the Chandi, I can't even say that one, Chandigarh one, and Animation Dolly, um, or Delhi, India's Delhi. So just interesting that there's some connection with, satellite cities. And, to me, that sounds kind of like the smart cities. And Ted Gunderson used to talk about SMART. He said that, he was FBI individual who was in charge of investigating all of the like SRA type crimes or things that kind of fell into those categories. And he would say, all finders went to SMART school.
Hmm.
And I think that that's, highly indicative of, it's not just by chance now that we have all of a sudden all these smart communities
Yeah.
popping up.
Yeah.
Is there a connection between, um, the smart cities and the smart schools to the finders or those connected with the CIA and FBI who are trafficking our children?
Hmm.
Both hierarchy and those they consider expendable children.
Wow. Wow. Let's see here. That's just a
Yeah, if you
closer. Yeah.
yeah, that was the close up of it, and you see the two triangles there. Those triangles represent authority in the system. Um, and you also have the A kind of representing the male compass. Some of these symbols, like when you break down the V representing the female chalice, you have the A's representing the male compass, and then you have to ask, you know, what specifically does that other one represent? The C that's broken into three parts.
Hmm.
Um, Remember, as we've talked about the the rose and how the system uses that in their programming. And at the very core of that rose, you have three um,
Oh.
hearts that they use, right, to form
Hmm.
the base of the circle where they connect people to Egyptian gods and base emotions. So it's interesting that they've kind of spread them a little bit apart there, but could that be, is there more to what this is representing?
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's that one.
Yeah, so here we see kind of those same like whether you want to call them birds or kind of V's. We kind of saw that going out of the 1C for the MAAC main symbol. So it's interesting that they're still using those three V's together, kind of looking like a book that's being opened up with the sunshine coming out. And then you have 6 leaves out of there and a heart, making 7. Um, and what's kind of in the center of that between the sun, you've got kind of a child and I would say it would be a man,
Mhm.
um, which is interesting. Like you're like, wait, they have the heart, the child, and the man. Um, but in the system, the leaves, there can be different representations of leaves that usually are done like laurels on the sides of things.
Mhm.
Those are used to represent priestess groups. The sun or the half sun usually represents a connection to the golden dawn. So is this representing, that they're training, priests or priestesses um, who are going to be engaged in light side magic, given knowledge, for that through books, um, hidden level books. So, it could be several different things. Um, it looks like this one's focused off the East Coast
Mhm.
versus the others more West Coast, which we know, there's high priestess groups. You have a lot of the Kabbalah that's done there along that Eastern coast. Um, a lot of high level Kabbalah teachers. So, um, just interesting. I think, we definitely have to be looking into it. Um, One of the other things is at times, like part of the interesting connection is that they're in the Texas area, there is a river walk where they have a statue,
Hmm.
and that statue is to a volcano goddess, so they say.
Mhm.
But what's interesting is it looks like she's holding something in her hand, almost like an eyeglass and looking out. But the eyeglass actually looks like a star. It looks kind of like a star, but to me, it looked like this image we see here of the child where, it looked like she was holding a little child in her hand peering through.
Wow. Wow.
So it's interesting that they have that like right in the middle. And could it be connected to spiritual gate programs that are in the area? That's very possible.
Wow. Wow. Let me see. Oh, there's the Head Start one.
Yeah, so the original Head Start programs, we saw quite a bit of that there in Austin when we went to the LBJ library. That they have a whole corridor where they're showing all the stuff that Lady Bird and others invested in. And in those pictures, you can see a lot of the Brotherhood Masonic ties that are to some of these governmental programs that are meant to support children. We saw, a lot of them would wear the white hats, the white suits, the bow ties with different colors, and all of that is reminiscent of the Rotarian group.
Hmm.
It looked like the Rotarians were very influential in starting the Head Start program. Here we see some more things, within the system when they have their programs, depending on what the program's focus is, they'll kind of use different colors or symbology. Blue and red are two of the main colors that the system uses to define that an area is used for their youth development programs, especially in regards to magic.
Mhm.
And they define the two systems as, Rome and Judah. Now that breaks down based on what they're talking about. Like, I've brought out those colors and those names in regards to the financial system and who's financially backing.
Mhm.
So at one level, it can represent, you know, the multitude of, who's responsible for paying for which parts of the program. Um, they'll submit their finances either to, Rome, which is going to be the Vatican, represented by the blue, or Judah, which is the red, which is going to be represented by the Sanhedrin. Um, but this also means other things. You have, let me just I'll start with the bottom one, but I want to quick look up um, one more symbol because the arrow is very um, significant in alchemy.
Hmm.
And what they do is it's just their hidden way of saying that, you know, these are, this is this is the knowledge that is going to be taught, that there's going to be some form of alchemy taught. And, I hate to ruin every Catholic's day, but yay, the Vatican's paying for your children in Head Start to learn alchemy
Hmm.
without you knowing it. Why
Wow.
aren't you going to know? Because the first code that they teach the children is the code of silence, which that's why they use the single arrow. It also could, other times they'll represent it with the hush symbol or um, the single key. So as children are learning, they'll learn multiple things that will be used as a reminder that they have to keep that code of silence. That's what they're upheld to. Um, what do they have to be silent about? They have to be silent about, the information that they're going to be orally learning.
Mhm.
Um, that's how it's passed down. So what's the next connection? We see that red and white um, symbology where I've talked about how the white represents the two pillars
Yeah.
and then it will represent a gate, a ball, meaning that you're going to have the spiritual gates, and anything connected to the gates, the Sanhedrin is going to pay for. But in that, you have something else too. That red and white, especially with the stripes going vertically, I brought out on Infiltrated Truth last week. We were discussing the Order of the Red Men, which
Mm.
is one of the more ancient orders of the system. They change their names multiple times, connect themselves to other groups, and you kind of see, where they'll have names that are not outright advertised, like let's just say the foresters. You can go to your graveyards near you. You can find in their headstones that look like trees. They'll have axes, they may have saws, they'll have lilies, they'll have the laurels, they'll have ivy. Um, those are going to be your, what they claim, order of foresters. But their more ancient name was Order of the Tall Trees.
Mhm.
So sometimes within the system, they'll change their names. Or, as Gary Wayne has brought out, you have the older orders of the Knights of Malta, who used to be known as the Knights of St. John Christendom. So
Mhm.
they'll make it look like they kind of, like these groups close down because they don't want you to know they're all interconnected. They bring out something new, and it makes it hard for people to bring out their truths about the system. So, what do the red and the white stripes, you know, vertically cascading represent? It's the Sons of Liberty, which are
Hmm.
connected. They're one of the groups under the red men.
Okay.
So it's interesting that, you know, the red men are not all necessarily connected to Native Americans, even though that can be a chunk of it. What you have happening though is that, you have these groups that are interconnecting as brotherhood, and they're overseeing regionally the system's assets through different organizations, whether that's the Native American reservation. Um, how are they going to get access to that reservation? Well, they connect with leaders within the reservation. Those leaders then become members of certain brotherhood orders under the Masonic department. And then that's how they're doing the supply and chain
Yeah.
through those reservations. Um, you've got the Order of the Red Men. More commonly, what you'll see is the Order of the White Buffalo, because that tends to be their face front order that is commonly known. So,
Wow. Wow. That is very, very interesting. All right. There's a couple that I went past. Okay. This was a mural that they had. So I wasn't, it looks almost like a sigil with a circle. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
yeah, it is interesting, huh? I mean, it's kind of looks like an avocado. Hate to say it, but like a wood avocado with you see a spade and you see what looks like the broken spade, but then it could be used as something else. Um, and then you have like a phoenix in the middle with the red sash.
Well, it was interesting. A couple years ago, we went to Mexico and visited a friend of ours who has a ministry there to the migrant workers in Mexico, and the stories and the living conditions and
Mhm.
the restrictions, it was incredible to see these, you know, uh, hundreds and hundreds of these block, you know, buildings that were just like, one room each where, a whole family with lots of kids would be in, um, and the conditions that they were there was just absolutely atrocious. And the threats, they were stuck
Yeah.
in a system, you know, because they couldn't go back home, and all kinds of things. So anyway,
It's
um,
interesting. It kind of is like, I heard early stories of people who came through when they were building the railroads. And, in the early 1900s, um, they actually would set up like railroad cars, and the men's families would live in the railroad cars while they were out working and stuff. But it was interesting. You have a lot of the same things as early settlements, a
mhm,
lot of crime, a lot of
yeah,
um, extreme weather conditions, and very harsh winters and summers, and going between those extremes, a lot of famine, pestilence. If someone got sick, it would go through the whole camp really
mm,
quick, and you'd get a lot of death at one time. But a lot of harsh working conditions and oppressive
yeah.
work conditions.
All right, I think I've got one more slide. This was actually the picture that my friend sent to me, I think on the side of a bus. It was just interesting, this picture of the child with that kind of ring around I think that is the left eye.
And was that connected to the
Yes.
MAAC? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So interesting, huh? That it's very plausible that that is could be used to send that message that the Illuminati are behind it, or you've got the Brotherhood groups um, behind it.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what a morning.
Definitely, definitely.
So, when people see these types of symbology, in their region, what can they do? Because sometimes it can just feel
Well,
hopeless and helpless.
right. I think the most important thing is to pray, because, we've got a couple things going on. First, you have things that have been established by the Brotherhood system that are meant to indicate or communicate certain things to those who govern at their regional levels, those that work through the different Masonic or Jesuit Catholic, the Kabbalah, the Satanist, or the Mormon, regional levels who are going to be overseeing those assets.
Mhm.
And those people are going to understand those symbols that are relevant to them and their position in the system.
Mhm.
Those who oversee their quadrants are going to understand those things. But what we have to be careful of is, not just taking little things. Like I get a lot of people who will send me a bunch of logos or other things, and they'll be like, "Oh, I've got this and this," and it's like, "No, that's not what that means,"
Mhm.
because it's not applied across the board. Like when we break down the city sigils, we talked about that when we were looking at the universities, that
Mhm.
those symbols communicate different things.
Yeah.
First you have your city sigil, which is going to be your regional sigil.
Mhm.
If you have a township one, that means that, your area is under a private charter. That symbol's going to be read at a quadrant level, not at a regional level. So you
Yeah.
have to kind of understand those basics, which is why I've been trying to have the land assignment coaching courses so people can really understand how do we apply this knowledge. Um, so when you start to get into, you know, like businesses or personal buildings, not the governmental and the um, what's the other one? The governmental and the military usually are read the same as those regional symbols. So those are a little different. But then you get into, the logos that people begin to use on their businesses or their companies. Those you can't always read as even being connected to the brotherhood.
Okay.
In that you get designers, you get people
Yeah.
who are paid in marketing, you get, so unless you know that it's connected to a brotherhood group, like we know that within the brotherhood you have the priestesses of Delphi. We know that they create societies, fundraiser groups, trust, and work out of their communities in that way. So one of those things that they created was the Delphine Society. So therefore we know, like when we look at their stuff, like we know it's connected to a brotherhood group, and therefore, they're going to use um, their way of communicating to each other beyond what the public knows or understands.
Mhm.
But if we don't know that it's connected to a brotherhood group, we can't just um, interpret it that way. It may be a false interpretation. So we have to be careful with that. And, so what do we do then? I think the best thing we do is pray, ask the
Mhm.
Lord. Lord, he says in Isaiah 58, before I say the prayer, but Isaiah 58, the Lord says, "This is the type of fast that I desire, that you would fast for your voice to be heard on high, so that the chains of wickedness and the yoke of oppression may be broken asunder." So, the Lord wants us to be aware of where is wickedness occurring in our communities, where is oppression occurring in our communities. Oppression can be any heavy yoke, whether that's depression, whether it's despair, shame, guilt, um, even certain things like alcoholism. There can be an oppression with that, or with drug use, or
Mhm.
prostitution can have an oppression over it. Migrant working, or slavery, bondage can have an oppression, abuse,
Yeah.
whether that's physical or emotional, can have an oppression connected to it. So ask the Lord to show you the wickedness and the oppression and where it's happening and who are those who are dishing it out. Then ask the Lord to break the rod of oppression, uh, and to set the captives free. Go back to, Isaiah 61, where it talks about Jesus Christ's work to break, you know, those yokes, and um, to bring people out of the darkness. That's part of the good news.
Yeah.
is that he came to set people free from those things. And if we've been set free from it, um, then he's given us that portion of glory to go out and to speak that freedom over others and to break those yokes. Um, so that's where I start, and always keeping my eyes open and watching, seeing what's going around. If you see suspected trafficking, it can be difficult to report based on your area, based
Mm.
on who's in law enforcement, who's in charge of things. If you see something happening, you can email me about that and I can do a report and get that in. But, the other thing I do encourage is, the people I kind of see taking those reports and doing something about it in your area, um, are sheriffs.
Mm.
Um, can you ask the Lord? Can you work with the sheriffs in your area? Can you give them reports and say, hey, I'm seeing this? Right now, it's real iffy with that.
Yeah.
I don't encourage just going to anybody.
Yeah.
And at this point, beyond those that I've turned in my own stuff into and been connected with, I don't trust anybody outside of that.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of organizations are under investigation. A lot of them have brotherhood connections at the higher levels. So, it's really hard right now to know who to trust and, to ensure the safety of children.
And that's why, we only do what we see the Father doing, um,
Yeah.
like Jesus did, because we can feel like we're doing a good thing, and yet it may be actually, tipping our hand, if it's an infiltrator or whatever, and then they just change their tactics and keep on doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, that's what we've had happen, where we had a fake individuals claiming to be connected to, you know, the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force and working with certain organizations that were anti-trafficking. And what were those people doing? They simply were gathering intel.
mhm,
They were figuring out where things were. Um,
yeah,
and did children get rescued? No.
mhm,
Um, I think children got moved
yeah,
and from one place to another, and I think that those children got re-trafficked.
yeah. It's hard to talk about these things and to even fathom, the extent to which it's going on, and not to, be in hopelessness, because our God has a plan.
Mhm.
And that's what I have to rest in, every day, because otherwise it can get very discouraging, in my own journey as well as the survivors that I work
Yeah,
with.
yeah,
And so we have to emphasize the power of God over this and that He has a plan. He wins. We know that. And so,
yeah.
we
And he absolutely rescues people out with a mighty hand, and I think that's the difference, all throughout his word we see, don't trust in men. Don't he's even what's the one verse? Don't put your hope in the soldiers, the chariots, the horses. They aren't going to save you, nor the number that you have in your army.
Mhm.
But who's the one who saves us? Who's the one who delivers us out of our situations with a mighty hand? It's Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's his word says in Isaiah 61. And then later he proclaims it in the gospel. Today this word has been fulfilled. And it says, I have come and I have been anointed. I have been appointed. The Father anointed and appointed him to do that job of saving.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, This week was a little challenging. Some memories came up, from being in the system um, in a place where many children, were not did not survive. And it is hard walking through these things. And I just want to speak to other survivors who may have experienced that is, our hope is in Jesus and we get to trust in him.
Mhm.
And as horrific as some of these things are, um, there is restoration and rescue, um, and all of those things. And so, not to be discouraged if these things are
Yeah.
surfacing. I know it's been a challenge, for me to walk through it, and even one, twice now, just sitting down at my keyboard and just singing spontaneously to the Lord, and one the Lord said, sing a lament for the children, and there is something about entering into that place of grief with the
Mhm.
Lord. Um, and then, another time it had more to do with, God, how could you love me, when I was a part of horrendous stuff? How could you
Yeah.
forgive me? And I I don't know if people um when you understand the depth of, evil that you've participated in, you understand the grace of God in a way
Mhm.
that, I never did before, you know? In the past, it was, my good works, and I was really good at doing all of these things. And that was one of the interesting things the Lord spoke to me is that part of that, drive to be perfect
Mhm.
was to make up for bad things that I was forced to do, and being able to release all of that to the Lord to go, I don't have to do these things to make up for it because you paid
Mhm.
for it all. And I get to rest in your grace and in your love that goes beyond anything we can think or imagine. And for me, that's what, I have to keep coming back to is his grace,
Mhm.
his love, his mercy, because otherwise, it can feel hopeless.
Absolutely. I want to share. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to sing a little song here.
Sure.
But let me share the story. I know we've talked a little bit about, um, the day that I got out
Mhm,
of the system. And that was such a powerful day. Um, we had gathered at one of the main churches where, my abuse happened for a family funeral. And I and my mother were given the task of singing a song
mhm,
for the funeral. So, as we were up in the balcony of this church, the whole parade of priests come in swinging their incense and, doing their little thing. And then, you know, it was our turn to sing. And my mom had asked, what song did I want to sing? If I had a message to give to them, what was the message that I wanted to give? And this song, became one of those things that I literally, it was my prayer over all those people. And, um, even those who had passed, it's like there would just be those moments where, it can be hard enough to reconcile that such horrific things are happening. But at the same time, there's a release
mhm.
because you know that, you know, they're going into the Lord's arms.
Yes.
And there's that, turning of their face to the Lord and they don't look back. There isn't, it's like there's no looking back. So it's turn your eyes upon Jesus. And it says, "O soul, are you weary and troubled? No light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior and life more abundant and free. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. His word shall not fail you, he promised. Believe him and all will be well. Then go to a world that is dying, his perfect salvation to tell. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace.
Beautiful.
That was it. We
Wow.
walked out to the gravesite, and when I turned around to go back to the car, the Lord said, "I've released you from them."
Wow. It's so powerful. And I so agree with you. A couple of times when memories have surfaced, where I was involved, that, the Lord showed me the children
Mhm.
in the cloud of witnesses and them being able to express forgiveness to me and their love for me in
Yeah,
spite of, and it always just, I don't know, just breaks a deep place in us,
yeah.
um, it humbles us in such a way. And, I think of the verses in Revelation where it talks about the souls under the altar,
Mhm.
and that those, who this has happened to and are on the other side is I personally believe that they are interceding on the other side for, us and for the ultimate um, glory and restoration, that God has promised. And, the verses in Revelation, they're going, how long? Come on, come on. And I think of the verse 2 also in Revelation about the patience of the saints, and I never
Mhm.
understood, because that verse seemed kind of in the middle of all this other kind of stuff happening,
Yeah,
and yet, I believe that's part of, what we walk through is, we want justice and restoration and the glory of God to wipe out all this depth of evil, and he's like, I've got a plan. I've got a plan. Be patient, trust
yeah.
me. Let's walk this out together. And that's the glory and beauty of it.
And that can be hard, after witnessing, so many deaths and such graphic things, to realize that, the greatest honor is that, you know, someone has to be their voice. Somebody has to tell their story and their testimony,
Mhm.
that was taken from them
Yeah.
by the enemy. And we have a choice, we can keep that silence, keep bound by that silence, or we can begin to share their testimonies as part of our story. Where were the parts that interconnected? Where were the interactions that we had? And it's okay to say, that it's uh, it's okay to grieve. It's
Yes.
okay to grieve those deaths. And some of us, there were things that we were forced to do. Um, there were things that we didn't know what the outcome would be. Even sometimes when we chose to do what's right,
Mhm.
we said, no, we're not going to participate in the evil. Sometimes, our right choices, our good decisions were what caused those deaths or that torture. Um, and it's okay to, be in that place where we grieve that.
Mhm.
And it's a deeper grief
Yeah.
that has to happen. And it's okay to let that out, however we need to. Um, and I too, I really connect by finding a song or a lament.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times the Lord will give me a very particular one um, that I'll sing and stuff, and that's kind of just my way of releasing that grief.
Yeah. And it's so important. I think for me, things have been locked up a lot and, not having much emotion. And so things are opening up, which is good, but it's hard too when it's one of those things where it's convenient not to feel. And a lot of survivors choose to just numb out, dissociate, not feel because it's hard to face this stuff,
Hmm.
but with the Lord, we can walk this out. And I think there's creative ways that we can engage that are helping.
Hmm.
And for me, I think a couple of things have broken loose for more memories to come with engaging the right side of the brain and connecting the right and left side of the brain together in um, my husband and I are learning to line dance, and neither of us have a dance background at all. And I'm very, and I think it's because of the mind control and trauma I went through, because they try to separate the left and right side of your brain, but uncoordinated and not always knowing which is my right and my left, and so um, we first went to a dance place and went through a lesson. Unfortunately, there was a lot of people because it was like, oh my goodness, I hope she doesn't call on me.
You
It's
like,
embarrassment. How many people am I going to trample in the process of this? But we found some videos of some line dancing at home now, and so I'm practicing every day, and I think that is helping to sync some things up
hmm
in my brain, as well as in this season, the Lord was like, I want you to get back to the keyboard and just sing spontaneous songs or sing other songs. And then I have a friend, Carolyn Weaver, who she is a survivor that teaches art. And she sent me a series that she did on for survivors on emotion and art. And so I've been walking through those, and it was like, I loved how she did it, because it was like taking, a piece of paper, folding it in a four, and then opening it up. So you got kind of four quadrants.
hmm
And then she would say, pick a color, and just using one color, what does rage look like, or what does grief
hmm
look like? And using that color with your fingers to just kind of get out that emotion, and then what does peace look like? Um,
Yeah.
and so that's been really helpful to just kind of open up some of those things and get flowing in that process.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, we do that in the Beautifully Adorned too, not so defined, but we uh, talk about beginning to express your events you've been through or your emotions through art and stuff. And yeah,
It makes a difference.
yeah. I used to do a lot of, I liked gardens and I
Mm,
really connected with seeing things in that format.
yeah.
And so it'd be like, how do I see that at the moment and how am I going to draw that as a garden?
Mm,
And, why did I pick that? I think oftentimes because there was a place where, I would just always see myself sitting in different places of the garden with the Lord.
yeah.
So it automatically would bring me to that position of, working through the emotion um, with the Lord.
Mhm.
But,
But it's so good. It was actually before my memories started coming up, but we were encouraged to picture, like the garden of our heart, and the Lord
mhm,
being there. And when I first did that, it was, and again, I didn't have the memories at that point, so I didn't
mhm,
know. And there was there was some beautiful things around, but then there was this big pit, black pit in the middle, and I was like, what is this? And Jesus was there, and he was working on the pit, on, restoring it. And, my A personality type, I just wanted to get in there and let me do something. And he was like, no, I just want you to sit on this bench and watch me work. And, I was like, no, 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 let me do something. Let me do something. He was like, no, I want you to rest. I want you to watch what I'm doing, and he did show me ultimately, he, his plan was for this beautiful fountain, was going to be in this
Mhm.
place that this pit was, and so it was often going back and, that frustration of the pit, but
Mhm.
just being willing to trust him in the process and in the journey.
Hmm. So good.
There was another time, he was showing parts of my heart that was like totally burned out. And this was, I think, after memories had started to come, and it was like everywhere I could see was just this blackened earth, and I was like,
Mhm.
ah,
Yeah.
this is
Huh.
horrendous. But he said, let's just walk on it. And it was like every place where we took a step, there would be fruitfulness would come. The greenery would start to go,
Hmm.
and so he was like, just keep taking those steps, keep taking back that ground, of the
Yeah.
garden of our heart. And so sometimes it's a journey. Sometimes we just want it, come on, speed up. And he's like, it's okay. Trust me.
Yeah, it goes in layers, and it tends to be like, you'll think you worked through everything, and then, the
Up.
Lord will a year later or 2, 3 years later will bring you to that deeper level, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I believe a lot of it is his mercy, what we're ready and what we can handle.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we want the magic quick fix type of thing, but that's really what the system was all about, was like,
Yeah.
if you do this, we'll, magically make this happen or whatever, and so for all of us, just learning, this is a journey and it's a
Mhm.
process and it's beautiful, and we just get to um, put our hand in the Lord's hand and take that next step. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the imagery he's given lately, is he's like, I'll just see a hand stretched out and it's like, okay, I'm just going to put my hand in your hand and you're going to lead and guide me. So,
Yeah.
all right.
So true.
Any last things you want to share today, or?
No, what a great discussion. Yeah, I think that was a good place to go today, and I think, if it'd be okay for me, can I pray for everybody who's
Yeah,
listening in
absolutely.
their healing journeys?
Yeah.
All right. Heavenly Father, we thank you just for this time in your presence today. We thank you for the great conversation, the great ideas, the things that you lead us through, Lord, that are all part of your design for our healing. And Lord, I thank you that so many times, Lord, you could so quickly do it. You could just complete it and we'd be done. But then, how many things would we miss out that you're trying to teach us, Lord? Help us to be observant and to not miss, Lord, those deeper treasures that you are trying to give us through our healing journey. And we know that with that, Lord, the deeper we go in that healing process, the more that we have to give to those who are in need. So we ask that you would just work great healings, Lord, great miracles in the lives of all who are listening. And we ask that those miracles would be multiplied. We ask in your powerful name, Jesus. Thank you, Lord.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Jesse. And
Thank
thank
you.
you all for joining in on this conversation. I also want to let you know that I am beginning a new transformation group starting March 5th. It'll be Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. Later in the year, I'll do an evening group, but this is the next one we're starting. And there's something about being able to process trauma together in community that is really powerful. Is we absolutely need the connection with God to bring that breakthrough, and then we need to be able to walk it out in community where there's love and support. And so if you have trauma in your background, just want to encourage you wherever you're at in your journey, whether you've processed a lot, but just have a little bit more, or looking for a community to engage with. This is a powerful experience. And so we still have some openings if you are interested, and we'll leave the details in the notes below. So we just bless you today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Testimony Mountain.